Good evening and a very warm welcome to everyone out there. This is Joya Khan, Ambassador of Change from GETI, and your host for this live session. It's my privilege to welcome all my dear viewers and our esteemed guests on this live forum of Detox by the Global Education and Training Institute, which is by now very well known for pioneering the cause of disrupting education in its own unique ways. We invite bureaucrats, policymakers, and educators from all around the globe. So, holding the beacon of excellence and heralding the dawn of a new era, I bring greetings from the entire Getty fraternity. And as we usher in winds of change to steer this session ahead, I warmly welcome our esteemed speaker on this live forum of detox for educators, Mr. Rowan Van Dyke, who is the founder and CEO of DNL Training in Namibia and South Africa. He has over 30 years' experience in management and leadership. So, a very warm welcome to you.
Thank
He'll
you.
be speaking on disrupting education by adding salt. Mr. Rowan is the founder and CEO of DNL Training Namibia and South Africa, and he is considered as the leading authority on relational leadership and helps corporations and business how to create commodities of trust which develop relationships and trust within their teams through sincere communication. He is an international best-selling author, and his latest book, Relational Leadership, was released in April 2022 and has reached the first bestseller status on Amazon. Mr. Rowan is a member of Toastmasters International as well as the Professional Speakers Association of Southern Africa, which forms part of the Global Speakers Federation. He provides tips and tools on how to future proof your business in a rapidly developing technological age by adding salt to your training and leadership. He is the founder and CEO, as I said, of DNL Training Namibia and South Africa, with 30 years of rich experience in management and leadership. He is considered the leading authority on relational leadership and helps corporations and businesses to create commodities of trust which develop relationships and trust within their teams. That's the long list of qualities that Mr. Rowan comes with on this live forum. And I think the list is endless, sir. So without further ado, once again, a very warm welcome and over to you for the session.
Thank you, Joya. Welcome to everybody. Thank you for inviting me. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be watching from in the world. I want to speak to you primarily about um, disrupting education by adding salt. So, in other words, what this is it is a method of education and training. But I want to start off by asking you, have any of you ever heard the saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink? Anybody? This is an age-old proverb that was first introduced way back in 1311, quite a number of years ago. And effectively what it means is that you can offer somebody education, you can offer them opportunities, you can offer them many things, but unless they actually want it, and unless they are actually interested, in the case of education, in learning, nothing is going to happen unless they want it. You can give them as many resources, as many tips and tools, as much knowledge as you want to, but unless they want to accept it, it's not going to be worth anything. I want to tell you a story. Many years ago, when my daughter was much younger, she was in the early grades, I think around about grade 3, grade 4, and she came home one day and she had a problem with mathematics. She had been given a maths problem that she had to solve, and she had no idea. She was lost. She didn't understand the formula. She didn't understand the process and the whole way of working it out to get to the answer. Now, being the father, and also maths being one of my favorite subjects at school, I decided that I was going to help her. So I sat her down and I explained to her how to go about and unpack this problem to ultimately reach the correct answer. I was halfway through and she says to me, "That's not the way my teacher taught us how to do it." I thought to myself, but there's not only one way, there's different ways of doing it. So I said, you know what? Never mind what your teacher taught you. I'm going to teach you the quickest and the simplest way that you can understand it and you can do it. Yes, but my teachers, I said, never mind your teacher. I'm going to show you. And I proceeded to show her the method of how to get to the answer. And I let her do it a couple of times. And I gave her a number of examples, different problems, and till she grasped the method. And then she completed her homework and off she went to school the next day. And when I picked up after school the next day, she was crying. I said to her, "What's wrong?" "Yeah, I've got it all wrong and the teacher marked it wrong because I used the wrong formula." I said, "But I don't understand. There's not just one way of doing it." Anyway, left it at that, figured out teacher's formula, helped her do the homework on the teacher's formula, and she was happy. A few days later, I run into the teacher one afternoon when I'm picking my daughter up. And I confront her. I said, "Excuse me, ma'am. My daughter had this maths problem, and she asked me for some assistance because she didn't understand the process and the formula and how to do it. So I helped her. But you marked it wrong." "Yes, sir, but you see, it's very difficult teaching children if we have to teach them a whole lot of different methods. So we prefer to teach them one method, and then we know that it's easier and we can control the situation better." I said, "But there's more than one method, more than one way to do it." "Yes, sir, I understand, but you must understand it's difficult for us as teachers because we need to show them the one method that we can control it." So I realized that, you know what, it's not about teaching the child how to solve a maths problem. It's about teaching the child what the teacher wants. And this reminds me of an article I read a couple of weeks back where the Minister of Education of Ghana told how he traveled to all the various schools and he was speaking to the students about education, various parts of education and the importance of education. And at the end of every talk, he would ask the children, the assembly would ask them, "Does anybody have any questions?" And he says, after all these months and many schools that he's attended, not one person ever put their hand up to say they have a question. And he came to the realization that I came to, and that is, we are not teaching our children to think. We are not teaching our children to be creative. We are not teaching our children to analyze and evaluate stuff so that they can develop as human beings. We are trying to squash them into a little box that's comfortable for us and that's easy for us to control. So what's the solution? The solution is to add salt. Now, if I go back to my previous statement where I asked you whether you know the proverb, "You can lead a horse to water, but you cannot make it drink," I want to tell you that that is wrong. You can lead a horse to water and you can make it drink. All you have to do is feed it enough salt. The more salt you feed it, the thirstier it will become. the more it will drink on its own. You won't have to make it drink. That's the answer. Add salt. But what's the salt? So I love acronyms. So what I've done is I've taken the word SALT and I've created it into an acronym. And I'd like to discuss this acronym with you. So if we look at SALT, the S-A-L-T, the first part of it is what I call show and tell. This is where you give the theory, you provide the knowledge, you give them a textbook, you show them a video, you tell them a story. It's all communicated knowledge that is given to the child, to the student, to the adult, in an attempt to give them additional knowledge. But it's theory. And the only way we can learn theory is by memorizing it. And you cannot memorize yourself out of poverty. You cannot memorize yourself into a new job. You cannot memorize yourself into a higher education status. Memory on its own is not going to work, memorizing stuff. And as many would know, some people have an uncanny ability to memorize a lot of things. People speak about a photographic memory. But there's people that have the ability to memorize information and at a later stage that are able to then reproduce that information. But there are many people, for several reasons. It could be some or other condition such as dyslexia. It could be that they are nervous. It could be that they just don't have the cognitive ability to memorize a lot of information. So they are not going to learn properly. You need the information. You need the theory. But you need the next step, which is applying the theory. If I use a simple example like riding a bicycle, I can explain to you how to ride a bicycle. I can show you videos on the safety aspects of riding a bicycle. I can explain to you why it's important not to fall off your bicycle. I can show you pictures of people that have fallen off bicycles and the blood pouring out of their elbows and their knees as they've fallen off the bicycle. But that's not going to help you to ride a bicycle. I need to let you get on the bicycle and ride it. That's the application. You need to practice the skill. You need to take that knowledge that you've gained in the S of SALT, and you now need to apply it in a practical environment. Whatever you do, even in the case of my daughter with maths, she needed to not just understand the formula, not know the formula, not just know what the teacher taught her, but she had to physically do it to get to the correct answer. Most trainers, educators, organizations, people that trying to teach people other skills usually stop here. And this is where our problem comes in. So we give them the theory, we give them the knowledge, we allow them to practice it, but we leave it. We don't allow them to properly develop that skill. That's where the L in SALT comes in. Learn by practice. I need to ride the bicycle over and over and over and over again. Because by learning through practice, I'm going to make mistakes. I don't know if any of you actually ride a bicycle, and I don't know how many of you actually got on a bicycle the first time and drove it without the training wheels, just the two wheels. I know I fell off and I fell hard. And my father turned around to me and said to me, "You can only ride a bicycle properly Once you've fallen off at least 7 times, that first time hurt. I really didn't feel like falling off another 6 times and having just as much pain. That was not going to be funny. But that's the reality. We need to allow people to practice. We need to allow them to make mistakes, because that is how they gain experience. By making those mistakes and learning from those mistakes, they gain experience. So if I go back to the example of my daughter with a maths problem, this is the point where the teacher should have allowed her to try various ways of getting to the same answer, because that would ensure that she understood the process, she understood the formula, she understood what was required and the steps that were required, even though she might have used different ways and rearranged the steps in different ways to get to the same correct answer. If you do this, if you not just give them the knowledge, but you allow them to apply the knowledge in a practical environment and combine the theory with the experience, and you allow them to practice it continuously and learn and grow and make mistakes and find creative and innovative ways of reaching the same result, then you're going to get them to a point where they have enough ability to teach it forward. In other words, my daughter with her maths problem, if she had learned all the different ways of doing it, would not just have passed the exam because she got to the right answer once, but she would have learned it to such an extent that she would have been able to help her fellow students, and she would be able to coach and train them on reaching the same example and teaching them all the different ways of doing it. We can't just give people bits of the process. We have to allow them to learn it properly and learn it over and over and to teach it forward. If you think back on history, you think how everything has evolved. I mean, I'm sitting in a different country, thousands of kilometers away from all of you, and I'm speaking to you live, real time. This was unheard of 30, 40 years ago. But it's because somebody was given a theory on electronics and technology, and they were allowed to apply it, and they were allowed to practice it, and they were allowed to gain experience and make mistakes and learn new ways of doing it, that we today are in a position that we are. In 20 years from now, this is going to be a lot different. We're already at a stage where I can have here, and I can have an avatar standing on a stage in India where you are, and it would look like me speaking to you, but I'd be in a totally different country. Technology and skills and our economy and our world only evolves if we apply SALT to everything that we train and teach people. Otherwise, people will not come up with new and creative ideas. Let's look at some of the science behind this. I'm not a scientist. I in no way am a surgeon or am medically inclined. I have a doctorate in business, not in medicine, so I won't claim to be all medically involved. But what I do know is that your brain, the human brain, is made up of thousands and thousands of nerve endings. And these are called axons. And they're like little electrical wires that run throughout your brain and connected at different points. And you have current that flows back and forth. And this current that flows is information. So every time I see something, every time I read something, every time I hear something, or I taste something, or I smell something, where all my senses are involved, this sends information throughout the brain to different parts of the body so that the body can understand and function. But what happens with these axons is they are covered with something called a myelin sheath. And for us in education and training, this myelin sheath is the important thing. Because what happens is every time a particular pulse of information goes through the axon, Each time that it passes through, the myelin sheath grows thicker and stronger. The end result is that at some stage, you don't have to forcibly send that information through the axon. It'll happen. Yeah, we talk about our subconscious. We talk about doing stuff subconsciously. I'm sure many of you will have examples of where you've done something you think, "Oh, that wasn't what I planned to do," but because I do it so regularly, it's become a habit that I do it automatically. That's because your myelin sheath on those axons have grown so thick that it becomes automatic. Now, by applying salt, I increase this myelin sheath and I help that information and that theory and knowledge that I'm trying to get the person to understand and to grasp. It becomes automatic. It becomes a habit. So if I ride a bicycle, I don't have to think about riding the bicycle. I don't have to think about what to do next. It will automatically, it'll feel like it's automatic and it's happening because it's become a habit. It's cemented in my brain. But that only happens if I do it over and over and over again. Because in that way, I keep sending those pulses through that axon and I build that myelin sheath. So let's look at a practical example. I love coffee. I don't know about you, but I love coffee. And in most of my training, when I'm trying to explain something practically and get the example across and cement it with the people, I use coffee. So let's say you own a coffee shop. You have now opened this new coffee shop and you've advertised and you've employed a number of people that are going to serve coffee, called baristas. So you have these people, these baristas, but some of them are fresh out of school. Some of them are maybe know a little bit about making coffee, but they still need to learn the skill to be able to serve your customers properly and to serve them a decent cup of coffee. So you need to teach them. Now, you can explain to them about the different types of coffee and the different ways of presenting the coffee and how to know when the water's boiled. And some people take sugar, some people don't. Some people take milk or cream, some people don't. So that's all information and knowledge that you can give them and they can learn. But they're not going to remember it. And if you explain to them how to make a cup of coffee, they're not necessarily going to be able to make a cup of coffee. So you have to let them actually make the cup of coffee. So they need to apply the theory. But I suppose that first cup of coffee is not going to taste very nice. You're probably not going to want to serve it to your customers. But it doesn't matter. They've at least learned how to make the cup of coffee. Now you can let them, in a controlled environment, under supervision, let them make coffee every time, more and more and more coffee, and keep making cups of coffee till eventually they become good enough that you can serve their coffee to the customer. But if you allow them to carry on, they will eventually develop new ways of making coffee. Now, I don't know if you guys know the history of coffee, but coffee was introduced in the Americas by a gentleman named Sir Walter Raleigh many hundreds of years ago. And apart from the fact that at that stage the government told him it would never take off, it would never become something popular, they were very mistaken, considered how many countries now drink coffee these days. But those days they used to brew the coffee from the bean and it used to drink it black. Then somebody, through practice and through using salt, eventually realized, but hold on, I can add sugar to this and I can sweeten it a little bit. And then somebody said, but hold on, I can add milk or cream to it and it changes the taste slightly. And then somewhere along the line, somebody came and said, wait, if I'm clever enough, I can make little patterns on the coffee and in the foam and I can make it look pretty. And I can suddenly come up with things called frappuccinos and lattes and cappuccinos and upside down cappuccinos and who knows what else there is in different types of coffee. It's not just the same cup of coffee. That only happened through SALT. Because by applying SALT and allowing them to practice and to learn and to make mistakes and experiment, people came up with new creative ways of doing the same thing. And what happens is when you get to that stage, you no longer have to train the baristas to serve your customers. You can just run your coffee shop. You can go open another coffee shop if you want to, because those people that you trained now have the ability to properly train the next lot of people that come in. So to recap, you need to provide people with knowledge. You need to give them the theory, the understanding, textbooks, whatever. But you need to provide that knowledge. But that knowledge is the bottom step of gaining the prize. Next, you need to allow them to apply that knowledge and to practice it. To practice something doesn't mean I do it once. It means I do it over and over and over again. So the more they practice, the better they will become. Look at your top sports stars. Look at your top musicians. Look at anybody that has reached the top of their profession or their skill level. It's through practice. And then by practicing it continuously, they will eventually gain the experience. And that will then be the point where they've got the experience and they've learned it because it's cemented, it's in their subconscious. You will then achieve the main prize. You will have achieved your goal, your objective. And that person will be fully trained, fully capable, but also in a position to train the next group of people. Livingston in 1996 made a statement, and that was when metacognizance started surfacing. He said that simply providing knowledge without experience, and vice versa, it works the other way around as well. You can't just provide experience with not having knowledge, because there's certain things that you can't do it unless you know the theory behind it. But by simply providing knowledge without experience or vice versa, it will not be sufficient for the development of metacognitive control. In other words, I won't be able to be in control of my learning. I won't be able to learn anything. So I want to say to you again, you can lead a horse to water, and you can make a drink. You just need to give it enough salt. So if you're an educator, if you're a trainer, if you're a business leader, if you're a community leader, whatever you are, where you are involved in teaching and training, either young adults or children, give them enough salt. The salt implies that you don't just give them the knowledge, but you allow them to apply the knowledge in a practical environment. But you allow them to apply it over and over and over. And you even allow them to make a mistake or two. In that way, they gain the experience. And I guarantee you that they will reach a point where they will want to learn themselves. They will want to learn more. Success breeds success. If I did not know how to make a cup of coffee, and you taught me how to make a cup of coffee, and I felt confident enough that I made a good cup of coffee, and I can teach somebody else, I guarantee you, I'm going to want to learn how to make the next thing. Cup of tea, hot chocolate, whatever it is. So by adding that salt in the training and education, we can disrupt the current way of teaching people by only giving them knowledge and maybe only allowing them to apply it once or twice. But we will get them to a point where they will want to learn. people will, not just children, but people in general, will become enthusiastic about learning and about developing new skills. Yeah, we live in disruptive times. Everybody keeps talking about artificial intelligence, the fourth industrial revolution. Oh, people are going to lose their jobs. But if you apply SALT to everything in your training and development, for every job that is lost to a robot through artificial intelligence, at least 5 to 10 new jobs will be created and new opportunities for employment. So we don't have to sit back and say, sorry, I brought the horse to the water. If it doesn't want to drink, it's its own problem. To keep repeating myself, feed it enough salt. Thank you. So if any of you want to get in contact with me at any stage, if you um, can connect with through the Facebook and everything with me, and uh, the QR code is for my LinkedIn, but I'm prepared to discuss this with any stage. So you can work through GETI and get hold of me and contact me, and we can chat. Thank you very much. Thank you, Joya.
Thank you so very much, sir, for that very relatable and relevant topic. Uh, our viewers are very, very impressed. Allow me to read some complimentary statements.
Okay, thank you.
They said, loved the maths analogy. Too many educators focus on telling students what to think instead of engaging them in how to think.
Totally.
And another one says, that's a great tonic, thanks. And people tend to agree with you on more points than one.
Thank you.
So, uh, dear viewers, it's good to know that you have enjoyed the session. And let me just refer to the phrase, which reminds me from the saying in the Bible, where it has been said, "You are the salt of the earth." And also, let your speech be so gracious, seasoned with salt. Very clearly, the relevance of salt states that salt is a very, very important thing which is added to enhance the taste of the food, the color of the food. It adds flavor to the food. Without salt, no dish comes to its original taste. You can add so many things to a dish, but without salt, you will not be able to experience the taste of any cuisine in the world.
Mhm.
So, the
Exactly.
main idea behind the whole topic is that let your education have the flavor of salt, the relevance and the color that you want to leave behind in the minds of the children. Let it taste beautiful. Let it have a lingering taste in the minds of children, in the hearts of students. Because we, as parents, as educators, have an immense responsibility to shoulder. Like Sir just referred, let me refer to Sir, where he
Mhm.
says, refers to the points like show and tell, application, learn by practice, and teach it forward. Then Sir moves on to say, let the knowledge be applied, let the child practice, and let the child experience. So, all these are ways of adding salt to
Mhm.
the education that we are providing to the children. That's a beautiful concept, sir, the way you have put
Thank
it.
you. Wonderfully
Just,
summarized.
just to the point. And if we have been all ears throughout the show, I think as teachers, as educators, we'll be able to, make our class richer by adding just the right amount of salt to the our lessons, to our everyday teaching, to make our classes, that adding that extra zing to our teaching. And the entire lesson becomes worth a memory.
Mhm.
It is few teachers who are remembered all their lives. So many teachers have taught us, but it is the salt in the teaching that makes them stand out, all our lives. We remember our nursery teachers, our junior level teachers, our senior level teachers. When we move on to higher studies, we remember that one particular professor who stood out from the rest. And the reason being salt in education, salt in teaching. So, not more, not less, just the right amount to enhance your teaching, to add that extra flavor that is worth 1,000 memories. Thank you so very much, dear sir. The
My
evening was
pleasure.
wonderful. We'll take back fond memories and we look up to you to join us in another lovely session with another thought provoking topic which will truly enlighten us further. Thank
It
you,
will be
dear
my
viewers.
it will be my
Thank
pleasure.
you, dear viewers, for being with us. And yes, one of the questions that is there, how can we encourage our teachers, in the mad rush and roar of syllabus, everyday teaching, where you are tied down with so much of pressure? Teaching is no more that easy, as we all know. So, how can we motivate our teachers to add that right amount of salt to their topics, to their chapters, to make their lessons lively and everlasting in a child's memory, sir? That's the question to you.
Apply salt. The teacher needs to apply salt in the training with the child. And if you want the teacher to uh, encompass this and to go forward and to change the way they teach, you're going to have to apply salt as well. You can't just tell them to do it. You're going to have to allow them to try it, but they might also get it wrong from time to time, and you need to allow that. So it works both ways. If you, the educator needs to apply the salt, but if you want the educator to do it, whoever wants the educator to apply the salt needs to also apply the salt method to the educator and allow them to try new ways of doing things, to allow them to come up with new ideas. Maybe have brainstorming sessions. Get the educators together and talk through it and say, is there maybe a different way we can do it? This is not working for me. That's not working. Don't just go through the motions. So I don't know if that answers the question adequately or not.
Thank you very much, sir. So, dear teachers, I hope you understood the concept of, just adding the right amount of salt. Engage your children. Let their ignited minds, encourage them to think, question, and see what exactly works for you as well as for them in the classroom. Because no two teachers are alike and no two children will be the same. So see where the gap that suits you and bring in all the innovation possible. Bring in all the great methodology that you can provide. Use technology to the best and in constructive ways to make your lessons long lasting and empowering for you as an educator and for the students as learners. Thank you so very much, sir. Have a
My
wonderful
pleasure.
evening ahead, or the afternoon,
Same to
or the
you.
night, wherever you are in any corner of the world. Have a lovely remaining part of the day wherever you are. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
very much,
God bless.
everyone. Thank you, dear audience, for being with us. Hope you are taking back some wonderful points and enriching yourselves. Thank you, everyone. God bless.
Goodbye.
Bye.